So the start of the Summer Showdown qualifier truly didn't disappoint. It would seem that the first week of new qualifiers have set a new trend. What trend is that, you may be asking? Absolute pandemonium. That's what. The world has once again been turned upside down. We have been set up for what could be an absolutely magical tournament. Week 12 is shaping up to be very hype. Before getting into my preds for the week, let's take a few moments to recap my thoughts on last week's key matches, the first of which was London versus Paris, and this one did not disappoint. London showed that Sparker and the new coaching they have just might be the thing they needed to win a few games before the end of the year. Meanwhile, the Paris Eternal are looking very good. After getting a win like that, plus the reverse sweep against the Gladiators, Paris are very much on the rise. The team, which I once thought would be no better than bottom 5 in the league, is killing it. There is a serious opportunity for Paris to make the knockouts to possibly defend their Summer Showdown title from a year ago. Watch them carefully, or you just might miss out on the magic. Next was the Shock and Gladiators, and to my surprise, I actually got this one right. In typical Gladiators fashion, they got that random win against the Shock that they seem to get every single year. They truly made that hack fist of theirs work, but it definitely was not easy. Despite the Shock going through some mental barriers and losing yet another member of their championship core, it still went 5 maps, showing that the Shock are not to be taken lightly even if they're not at full strength. Moving on from North America, we had 2 key matches involving the Seoul Dynasty, and I gotta say, they showed a great understanding of the new meta. It was a pleasant surprise to see Marvel out there, who had 2 solid outings in a row. In the Chengdu game in particular though, Prophet was the star of the show. If Seoul can make a tournament, it might be time to start putting him in the MVP conversation. On the other side of it though, Chengdu were kind of lost out there. My biggest issue was how undisciplined they were. They committed ults at a lot of questionable times throughout the set, and I think that level of play is simply unacceptable for a team who is capable of so much more. Meanwhile, the Spark, they simply got outplayed by Seoul. Much like Chengdu, their comps couldn't really seem to make a dent in the rush comps ran by Seoul. It goes to show that they have some work to do if they intend to have another solid qualifier. Oh, and it was pretty cool to see Solman Su out there. It's been quite some time since he's gotten any sort of meaningful playtime. That's about all I have for my thoughts on the key matches that I made last week, so it's week 12 time. First on the list is the Paris Eternal versus the San Francisco Shock. If the me from the preseason could see this, then he'd probably call me insane, but this has to be a key match, right? 2 major storylines are on a collision course right now. The struggling Shock, they're looking to shake off a very rough week. But they just so happen to be playing a Paris team who are getting better and better by the day. After taking out the Glads, it's hard to not call them a legitimate threat. Combine that with the struggles of San Francisco, and all of a sudden, there's room for a serious upset. Paris truly have a shot here. Their synergy looks better than ever. This team who wasn't supposed to go far is giving everybody around them trouble. They seem rather comfortable in the current meta, which could be a huge problem for the Shock who are having some clear-cut issues. Paris seem very capable on multiple compositions, and they really figured something out with that Symmetra. The Shock have to be very careful. If they lose this one, they will not be in control of their own destiny with qualifying for the knockouts. So, do the Shock lose? Well, right now, I would lean towards it being a 50-50 affair. After what I saw last week, it might even be smarter to pick Paris. These 2 teams played the same opponents last week, but Paris looked better overall. But I'm still not entirely ready to give up on the champs just yet. Here's how I see it. Last week saw a lot of sudden changes, and it likely caused a lot of stress on both the players and coaches. Giving them a week to digest could be just what they needed mentally. Not to mention that it could help somebody like Glister get more comfortable in his new role. Glister low-key didn't even look bad on Tracer last week. By giving him and everybody else some time, he should in theory get even better for his team. The Shock are so ridiculously smart and talented, and I have to believe they can shake off one bad week. I don't want to make it sound like I'm trying to discredit Paris or anything, because I'm not. The Shock just have a very, very high ceiling. It's nothing more than a gut feeling with no real evidence, but I suspect that the Shock will play at least a little bit better this week. In my opinion, it was more mental than anything else last week. They could not get out of their own way. If they can overcome this barrier, they should win. But just to be safe, I'll say they win it in 5 maps. I'm always willing to give the 2-time champs with Coach Krusty a second chance. But if things still don't feel right after this week, then it's a different story. But for now, I will believe in them to get through this. Closing out Friday, there's another huge banger potentially. The Atlanta Reign play the Washington Justice. Both teams definitely ended the June joust on a positive note, and with the meta appearing to be rather versatile, it gives both teams an opportunity to play up to their strengths. In my opinion, that probably will benefit the Justice more right now. Atlanta have shown they can play the Winston comms, but that is their opponent's bread and butter. That's what Mag is the most comfortable on, and he gets a Decay Tracer by his side. Decay having his best hero at his disposal will be a problem for the Atlanta Reign. Even Edison likely won't be able to fully match what he can do on that character. The good news for the Reign is that Reinhardt is relevant again though. Their rush comps have been top tier this year, while the Justice have not played at that level quite yet. In my opinion, this game comes down to how much the Reign can get the Justice off of dive. If the Reign manage to have the Justice play their game, they surely could win. My issue is, I just don't see that happening. Washington are not some noob team you can expose with relative ease. Maybe I'm wrong when I say this, but I doubt the Justice will even want to use Rush as their primary composition when they're so comfortable with Winston, Tracer, and Sombra. In my opinion, this contest is Justice favored, which is why I'm predicting them to take the set 3-1. The Atlanta Reign have shown they are capable of competing with good teams, so surely this is an interesting contest. But in the end, Washington are more trustworthy in the clutch. They've got a few of the best players in the lobby on their side, and when push comes to shove, I expect the likes of Decay and Fury to go off, which is why they ultimately get the advantage over Atlanta. Next up is the start of APAC for the week. It's the Fusion versus the Charge. So now that I've seen what most of the successful APAC teams have been running, I'm convinced that this could be a great meta for the Philly Fusion. Reinhardt comps are right up their alley. In fact, we've already seen them utilize it a fair bit, and it plays up to so many of their strengths. Carpe on the McCree, Rascal on the May, Mono on Rhine, Toby and or Funny Astro on Lucio. It's absolutely huge. Last week, Guangzhou showed that they like it as well, but compared to Philly, you can't help but feel like they're outmatched. They showed major inconsistency issues. Lots of cracks were showing, like Kareev getting hard focused, for example. Can a struggling team like the Charge realistically get that fixed for an opponent of this caliber? Probably not. Part of the problem is the Charge can't even get away with throwing them off with something else. Put them on a dive comp instead, and the Fusion still should be able to match them with relative ease. It goes without saying that I have the Fusion taking the contest in a sweep. It's an all-around tough matchup for the Charge. Philly's greater teamwork and star power makes them a tough opponent to overcome. Maybe one day this matchup could be closer, but more improvements need to be made first, and it's pretty clear that we're still a long way off from that. Closing out a shortened day 1 of APAC, it's pretty interesting. The Seoul Dynasty take on the Shanghai Dragons in key match number 3 of week 12. It's hard to say what goes down here because, Seoul, they looked really good last week. I would argue it's the most decisive they have looked all season, and they did so against 2 decent teams. It's not like they played like the Valiant and the Charge, you know? They defeated opponents who are considered to be around their level, and they did so quite easily. I know there's still a bunch of Seoul haters out there, but you can't really say they've been inconsistent these days. They're winning a majority of their games. There's no guarantee, of course, but from what we saw last week, they seem rather competent on the rush comms, and that is something that Shanghai tends to stray away from, I feel like, which makes this very intriguing. The Dragons have shown they can be good on rush, but a lot of the time they refuse to use it. It gives me the feeling that they'll continue to avoid it for some reason. And that very well could be a problem. From what I saw in APAC last week, these Reinhardt rush comps can dismantle a dive comp. Look at what the Charge did to the NYXL, or what Seoul did to Chengdu and Hangzhou. It's up to Shanghai to look at what these teams did wrong and either find a counter comp or pick up rush themselves. And to be fair, they might. But Shanghai also have a habit of being very stubborn, so it really can go either way. The Dragons are absolutely, positively the better team on paper, but as I've come to learn the last couple of weeks, that won't always mean you get the win. If Shanghai come in with the right game plan, this should be a dub. But right now, I'm pretty boomed. So many crazy things have happened in NA. Now it's APAC's turn since they've been pretty tame for the most part. This one might seriously come back to bite me, but I am predicting the Seoul Dynasty to take down the Dragons in a 5-map series. Recently, I've been trying to get out of my comfort zone a bit. I feel like I go a lot safer than most people do with their Preds, so when it comes to the teams with top rosters, I almost always pick them even when there is upset potential or a serious chance they lose. So let's keep that trend going from last week. Seoul are overdue for a win against Shanghai anyway. Much like the Gladiators and Shock rivalry, the Dynasty are pretty good with sneaking out a win against Shanghai. Seoul appear to be extremely confident. This is the time for them to strike. I'm going to say that Prophet and Fitz have yet another fantastic outing. On top of that, Marvel will surprise the world by playing up to par with Fate, aka the June Joust hero. Marvel could seriously tip the scale in his team's favor with another sick performance on Reinhardt. Solar overdue for a tournament appearance and a win against Shanghai, so this feels like the perfect time for an upset to happen. With day 1 of APAC out of the way, we head back into NA, which will have some more interesting contests. But before we get into them, we have to get a not so exciting one out of the way first. The beginning of Saturday afternoon has the Paris Eternal running into the Vancouver Titans. A matchup that once seemed like a good opportunity for Vancouver to get their first win is now a potential gimme for Paris. If an old Paris team can beat them convincingly, think about what could happen this time. Think beyond previous results though. Just by going off recent performances alone, there's a night and day difference. The Eternal get the easy 3-0. Paris are making really good mid-game adjustments and they seem confident in themselves. Meanwhile, the Titans are still losing fights that they shouldn't and they have clear-cut confidence issues. You gotta go with the hot team in this situation. The first Vancouver win and or free breadsticks will have to wait. Moving onward, the Florida Mayhem attempt to get back on track in a rematch with the Dallas Fuel. Aside from Florida really needing this one, this has to be a key match for the simple fact that Checkmate, their DPS player that they got this year, is going to be starting at main tank. If you missed the Twitter announcement, Florida essentially made it clear that OG might be going through something right now, or that he's not getting the value they're looking for. And then it was further made clear by Albert that they went with Checkmate over another main tank because they didn't want to sign somebody who would be on high ping. It goes without saying that this is a very concerning situation for the Mayhem. This isn't the first time we've seen a DPS player randomly get switched onto main tank. Hydration and Taimu have done it in years past, and it never really worked out. Hydration's the closest thing we have to what you consider success, but it's not like the Outlaws won a lot of games that year. Something is very, very wrong. This team is very much in the danger zone. They're on a losing streak, and their tank situation just got a whole lot weirder. And think about it like this. Checkmate's first game as a main tank comes against Fearless, aka arguably the best main tank in the Overwatch League. That is a disaster just waiting to happen. Dallas were already favored in this matchup to begin with. This kind of puts the icing on the cake, no? Between Fearless potentially dominating and Florida going through a very tough stretch, this has to be a pretty easy 3-0 for Dallas, right? I don't see any way around it. Dallas will essentially get away with doing whatever they want to. If Pine was finally with the team, which I don't think he is, they could run the McCree-Rhine. If not, Dive's going to work just fine, especially now because they have Tracer and Sombra again. Florida seemed to like using the Sombra a lot, but that could be problematic. No offense to BQB, he is a fantastic player, but his Sombra, in my opinion, has failed to find much value while in the Overwatch League. His team never capitalizes on any of the opportunities, and he's better off on the Ashe or McCree. And Doha Sombra, it's been putting in the work all year, so no matter how you slice it, Dallas are in the driver's seat. To finish up your Saturday, a big rematch goes down between the Outlaws and Shock. Most of the time, I am of the belief that San Fran will never lose to the same team twice in a row. If you look back at their history since 2019, it is a fairly rare occurrence, but this is not the Shock team we have grown accustomed to. They are quite vulnerable right now. The losing, plus Striker retiring, has placed a barrier before them. This barrier is so great that you kind of have to think of them as the underdogs heading into this rematch. Last week showed that their synergy is lacking, and that is a problem in this specific matchup. As we've come to learn, Rush is Houston's bread and butter. They feel incredibly comfortable on it, and to make matters worse, Dante has access to both Tracer and Sombra again, which arguably makes their dive comps just as good as the Shocks. San Francisco better figure something out quickly, or hope for some insane individual heroics, or their revenge game could turn out to be nothing more than a flop. I don't say this often with this squad, but I am genuinely concerned for the San Francisco Shock. After what they showed me last week, plus all that has happened recently, I do not find them super trustworthy against a respectable opponent. They very well might win because they're the Shock, but I feel obligated to pick the Outlaws, and I'll say they squeak out a 3-2 win as they take advantage of San Fran's poor plan control. If the meta was less open, I might favor the Shock, but the Outlaws have a ton of opportunities to gain a serious leg up, which is why I believe this is fantastic for them. Heading into Sunday, we kick off with the Seoul Dynasty versus the Guangzhou Charge. Take everything I said about Guangzhou versus Philly and apply it to this. The Charge seem fairly confident on their rush comps, but Seoul are clearly far stronger on it right now. Seoul are simply in a better place overall. They've got it figured out. They possess that consistency that Guangzhou have been craving since day one. The Charge just don't have much to offer. You've got Choice A1 making some nice plays on Tracer, but Soul have Prophet. And with the way Fitz has been performing this year, the Charge DPS in general might be in for a rough day. The Soul Dynasty should win the set 3-0. Soul have impressed me so much on the Rush comps, and I love that they're making use out of Marvel on main tank again. If they can roll Chengdu and Hangzhou, surely the Charge will not fare any better. An undefeated qualifier for the boys in black and gold could very well be around the corner. And finally, wrapping up APAC for this week is an interesting rematch between the Philly Fusion and Shanghai Dragons. I know they're the top team in APAC and they just won the June Joust and all, but this is a tough week if you're the Dragons. Seoul have already proven to be dangerous, and Philly could be just as scary, if not even tougher. While I highly doubt they won't come to play, I can't help but feel kind of concerned. If Philly forces them to play Rush, they potentially face similar problems that may or may not play out in the Seoul game as well. Now, do I personally think Shanghai won't be competitive? No, I'm a firm believer in them. But does that mean this is going to be some sort of cakewalk? That is also a big no. The Fusion might be coming off a tough June Joust, but they realistically could be way stronger this month. Like I said before, I love this team in a Rush comp. Many of their guys will look extremely comfortable out there. Speaking of their guys, more of them are potentially at their disposal, which will surely give them a needed energy boost. But even so, you still have to think of Philly as the underdogs, I feel. Given their performances in important games this year, my confidence is not as high as it could have been. They have the theoretical advantage, but something tells me the Dragons will have their number. I've been saying Rush isn't Shanghai's go-to style all video, but that does not mean they aren't capable of really playing well on it. They actually beat Philly on Nepal with it during the May Melee, if you can remember correctly. There truly is hope. That is why I'm going with a 3-2 win in favor of Shanghai. While I truly do believe the Dragons will have their way with Dive, I still think they'll hold their own on Rush too. They've shown such great prowess on adjusting to new metas lately, and there's simply no way they lose more than one game in a week, so I gotta go with the better team here. Up next is my fourth and final important game of the week. That's right, I'm talking about the June Joust rematch between the Atlanta Reign and Dallas Fuel. What an intriguing game. As mentioned previously, neither one of these teams played last week, so we truly don't know what to expect. Kind of like their matchup with Washington, I consider Atlanta to be the underdogs in this particular series. As much as they've impressed me as of late, they're playing a better team, and it's hard to argue against that. The good news though, like I was talking about earlier, the meta's in such a great place that Atlanta do have a real chance all week long, no matter who they're playing. I seriously would not be surprised at all if they pull off 2 big wins this week. This Atlanta team is more versatile than in years past. They've shown solid performances on multiple compositions. Playing a different variant of Dive could throw them off just a bit, but Rush is an option for them, which is really going to help their case on control maps in particular. And if they manage to get the right hybrid map, or maybe even some sort of assault map, maybe the Orisa comp becomes a possibility. If they can just take control on that first map, then manage to win hybrid or assault to extend the series, we could be looking at an upset. Do I personally foresee it happening? No, not really. With theoretical advantages aside, the Fuel are simply more proven. They've accomplished more. They've won this head-to-head already. And there is no one better at turning disadvantages and supposed weaknesses into a strength than them. The Fuel take a 3-1 win in what could be a pretty tough matchup. I gotta reiterate what I said in the Florida matchup. They still have Dive to work with, and that's not being taken away from them. And it gets stronger when considering their DPS have more comfort picks going for them. And you never know what could happen if Dallas play Rhine. I would say Atlanta have looked slightly better on it this year, but Fearless and the crew have shown they have what it takes to dominate on this comp too. I'm not that worried. The 2-time Tournament finalists are going to take care of business. Now on to Houston versus Vancouver. This one serves as what looks to be some nice halftime entertainment and a good opportunity to do some stretching or go get a snack. Because absolutely nobody is giving the Titans any sort of fighting chance, let's be honest. As we've grown accustomed to this year, the Titans make a habit of showing little to no fight. They'll win a map here and there, but they can't make the opposition sweat. It just doesn't happen. If there's a way to lose the fight, they're going to find it. The simple fact that they're playing a team way higher up on the totem pole makes me think it's a nice, easy 3-0 for the Houston Outlaws without any sort of hesitation. This particular scenario is even worse though. Houston practically have all of their weapons at their disposal. They have their expert levels of Rush. Dante has access to all of the signature heroes. Juby becomes more effective on the Lucio. This is a full-strength Houston essentially, so the Titans are all but doomed. And last, you've got the Washington Justice taking on the Florida Mayhem. This is a rough situation, ladies and gentlemen. There is a strong possibility that Florida is going winless in this qualifier. It's terrifying to think about. An 0-2 week would cement them as the number 10 team in the North American standings overall. With only one more qualifier to go after this, their chances of making the playoffs would look pretty grim. This is do or die. The scary thing is, I don't know if they can do anything to stop it, especially with their current situation. It's reasonable to have high hopes for a squad brimming with potential, but it's undeniable that they are struggling big time, and the thing is, I really don't understand what's going on. From a general team perspective, that usual synergy and decisiveness is gone, and that is a problem when considering who they're going up against. A hungry Washington Justice who seem to find their groove by the end of the June Joust is looking to get some more Ws. If you're not feeling sure of yourself when Decay is your opponent, you're in grave danger. Florida need to make some fast and furious adjustments or they're doomed. The issue is, it's really hard to make those changes while adjusting to a new main tank and preparing for two extremely good opponents at the same time. These combined factors make me think this goes in favor of the Justice in a 3-0 result. They're a better Sombra team. Their dive has been stronger as well. Not to mention that the Justice will surely have Mag take advantage of the situation. The Justice hold most, if not all, of the cards. Florida have their backs against the wall, and Decay and the boys simply just need to go for the kill and it's all but over. I am very concerned for the Mayhem. I'm hoping for the best, but the situation is not looking good. But that's about all I have for you. The Summer Showdown is heating up very quickly, ladies and gentlemen. Who knows what excitement is in store for us this time? Let me know what games you're excited for down in the comments section, as well as who you have winning this week. If you enjoyed the content, it would really make my day if you could hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, thank you all for watching my content. I appreciate your support so much, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.